Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our first edition of 2026 of Real Estate Tidbits. We had a little hiatus for the holidays to get recharged up and come out firing in 2026. Hope everyone had a great holiday season, a safe and happy New Year's, and best wishes for a healthy and prosperous 2026. I've got some interesting data to go over today and some opinions on some things. There's been a lot of news in the last couple weeks, so I'll go over a few of those things today and welcome anybody's comments on that. First thing we'll start off with is real estate, of course, and give you some information on some of the trends that I expect to occur in 2026 and what I see locally in the Central Florida, Orlando market. For those of you that, kind of keep a close eye on real estate values in your neighborhood and follow some of the news and such, there's still quite diverse opinions on how solid the real estate market's going to be in 2026, and will it be better than 2025? I personally, based on my experience, my analysis of the data, and just looking at what I expect to occur this year, I think real estate in 2026 should be a little bit better than 2025. I don't think it'll be like diametrically different, but I do think it'll be a more solid year. I think it should be pretty predictable in the sense that I expect interest rates to slowly continue to decline. Right now, for the most part, your 30-year fixed rate interest rates, they're in the neighborhood of probably 6.25, give or take. Some days you might find them a little bit lower. Sometimes you see promotions being advertised by a particular lender. But you have to be careful with promotions sometimes, because sometimes the initial rate is lower, but then the upfront expenses are higher. So you kind of have to read the fine print on some of that. But I do think that the interest rates will be a little bit lower, and I think that's going to create two different perceptions. Number one, obviously, it'll make things a little bit more affordable for folks. And number two, it'll just be a more positive, uplifting, psychological thing. I think it may kind of jar people to get off the fence that have been waiting to see where the markets are heading. And so I think that should be a good thing for the market. One trend that I'm definitely seeing in many of the Orlando neighborhoods is that time on the market has increased. And that's not unexpected, but it's a definite trend in a lot of neighborhoods. You're definitely seeing a correlation with a couple things regarding time on the market. Number one is what I call pricing strategies on what I would call normal homes. And what I mean by normal homes are homes that are in, neighborhoods that people overall feel comfortable with. And that the homes are representative of the neighborhood. They're not homes that when you come in, you ooh and ah, and they're always must-haves, but they're not homes that have anything fundamentally wrong with them. As with a lot of homes, people look at them and might decide they want to make a few modifications, whether it's, updating the kitchen or updating flooring, but that's the case with a lot of homes, so there's nothing unusual with that. But in homes in that category, which accounts for probably about 70 to 75% of the homes for sale, those homes are definitely taking longer to sell. And so the longer that it takes for a home to sell, it has a direct correlation to that home selling for a little bit less in most cases than had it come on the market with a little bit more aggressive pricing strategy. So the homes that I consider having superior components, the homes that people go into and really love what the sellers have done to the houses, those houses are still selling pretty rapidly and they're selling for very good prices. So none of the turbulence of the markets over the last couple of years has affected those significantly. The homes that are in that majority category of the 70% that I mentioned that maybe could use a little bit of change here or there, those are the ones that are being most impacted by pricing strategy. And I've got some situations of that on a personal level, and of course I see a lot of that in the marketplace. So the thing that I'm really trying to stress to my customers is you have to be realistic with what your expectations are. Regardless of what anybody tells you, the facts are the facts, and you have to work within the facts. And people are taking their time when they're evaluating homes that are not perfect. And so, for example, let's say that based on this 70% factor, the seller said to the agent, well, I'd like to market my home for about $500,000. And that $500,000, when you analyze the property and analyze the neighborhood, would be okay. It wouldn't be one that the agent would say that's excellent. We're gonna move your home really quickly, but they wouldn't say it's an unrealistic price either. Then there's a second philosophy on that same type of home, maybe to come in with the price at around, let's just say for discussion purposes, $485 or $490. Well, I can show a lot of anecdotal data if you were using that second strategy. Not only is that home going to sell much quicker, it's going to ultimately sell for probably a better price than that home that started at $500,000. So what have you actually done on behalf of that seller? Well, not only have you sold the house for a little higher price and you've sold it quicker, you've relieved a lot of stress and anxiety for that seller. They don't have to continually, over the course of multiple months, having the house show ready to let strangers in to view it. And they can move on with whatever their real estate strategy is, whether it's upsizing, so to speak, in other words, buying a newer or larger home, but needing to sell that home to fund that purchase, whether it's downsizing because they're what we refer to as empty nester family, their kids are grown, so they don't want the maintenance and the size of their home, but they want to utilize the funds from the appreciation that they've built up and probably buy a little smaller property, and frequently they'll pay cash for that home. They may or may not go into an age-controlled community, what we call 55 and over, but they want to, as you get older in particular, you want to eliminate the concept of having a mortgage. It's just one less thing that a lot of people have to worry about. So once they can pull money out of their principal residence, the likelihood of them paying cash for this next purchase has increased significantly. So that's something that I spend a lot of time on with sellers, and I'm actually increasing that. We've got one situation in particular that my wife has a property for sale, a very nice lady, and she's relocating to be closer to family, and she's going to be she's contracted to purchase a new property in the state that she's moving to, and she hasn't sold any homes for a long time, and she's like a lot of customers. She wants to generate top dollar, of course, but a lot of people, when you give a recommendation, they'll say a couple of things. Well, I don't want to give my house away, and I'm not desperate to sell, and that's understood with most cases. However, like in this particular customer's case, she needed the money to fund a purchase. She had a timeline as she was buying a new home on how long it would take her to sell this house so that she would be able to consummate that transaction out of town. And so to us as the agents, time was somewhat of the essence. However, to her, she didn't feel that urgency at the beginning. To compound that, the house went on the market, during the holiday season, and she priced it at a price higher than we recommended. And it was enough higher that it concerned me. That being said, it's her property. We can only lay out the information, and not everybody will follow our recommendations to the T. So to summarize that one, that home is still on the market. It's been on the market for about a month or so. The traffic on it was a lot less than we would expect on it under normal circumstances. And now time's really of the essence for it because the builder has kind of a drop dead date on their end. So we did make the appropriate price adjustment actually a couple days ago, and I expect that will be the impetus necessary to successfully sell that house. However, if initially she had followed our recommendations, I feel comfortable that she wouldn't be in as much of a pressure point situation, and we'd be in a stronger situation in terms of what her ultimate yield would be. And that situation is very common. So I've been doing this a long time, and I pride myself on getting my customers top dollar, but knowing what's the best way to achieve that. So the corollary to this is you need to, as a seller, you need to go into a marketing and listing situation with realistic expectations. Otherwise, I'm bullish on what we're going to see in the next few months in terms of the market conditions. So I'm going to pivot from that a little bit to go over some sports. The two big things in sports right now are football. The NFL playoffs are starting tomorrow. They should be very, very good this year. They've got a lot of overall evenly matched clubs. Everybody's got their own opinion on who should emerge as the favorites. And if you listen to my podcast, I normally give you sports opinions. And initially, I'm probably going to shy away in the NFL from making too many pronouncements because it's really wide open. I would say in the NFC, the Seattle Seahawks are probably a very minimal favorite. My hesitation with them is their quarterback situation. In football, the quarterback's paramount. Sam Darnold, while he's had a solid year, he still has some gray areas in his play, so we'll have to wait and see. But we have this weekend for folks that like watching football will be great. For folks that don't want their partners watching football, they may not be so thrilled with it. There's 2 playoff games on Saturday, which is tomorrow, 3 on Sunday, and then 1 on Monday evening. So it should be very entertaining. Pivoting on that to college football, we're in the college football playoffs. This is the 3rd week of the playoffs. We're down to 4 teams. One of the semifinal games took place yesterday evening, a very interesting game. That was between the University of Mississippi against the University of Miami. And in a close-fought game, the University of Miami won. The University of Mississippi probably was a sentimental favorite for a lot of teams because they had some coaching drama as their head coach had taken a new job at LSU. And so he left before the playoffs started because the administration didn't want him around. So Mississippi acquitted themselves quite well with a new coach that had been promoted without a lot of planning, and they won their first 2 games. So props to the University of Mississippi, and also props to the University of Miami as they've been playing very well in the playoffs. The remaining semifinal game in college football is tonight. It'll be two of the top-ranked teams, Indiana University versus the University of Oregon. Indiana's probably a little bit of a favorite. They had an undefeated team this year, and they looked very strong. Their quarterback is projected to be the number one choice in the upcoming NFL draft, so he's the Heisman Trophy winner. And then on the other hand, the University of Oregon had a strong year, lost one game. They also have a top quarterback. Their quarterback is projected to be the number 2 player picked in the NFL draft. So you don't see that scenario too much. I would give the Indiana University team, I think that they'll win that game, but I think it'll be a close-fought game. The Indiana University, I guess their biggest attribute, besides having a solid team, is their coach has just done a phenomenal job in the last 2 years. He took over this team, which has been a mediocre to moribund college football team for numerous years. They always were one of the weak sisters of the Big Ten, which was always been dominated by Ohio State University and the University of Michigan. And I think Indiana only lost one game last year, and the year before they had a far worse record. And then this year they've been undefeated. So you got to give major props to the coach of Indiana. So the winner of this game will play Miami University next week. Now, the interesting thing about that game, normally either of these teams would probably be, favored by a fair amount over Miami, even though Miami is a good club. But it just so happened that the way things have worked out this year, the championship game is going to be played in Miami. So Miami will have a home field advantage and a lot of fans there. And so that's an advantage, obviously, to Miami. So the game should be a lot, from an opinion standpoint, it'll be considered a lot closer matchup than having Indiana or Oregon as a significant favorite. Who will win that game? Well, I'm not going to give my opinion on that until I see tonight's game, but on next week's podcast, I'll be sharing my opinion on that. So that's all with sports. Enjoy those games. The next thing I'm going to go over is a real estate concept that's quite important, but it's not something that's localized. This is a national issue, and I'll give you some pros and cons. I don't have a definitive opinion yet, but I've got some feelings about it. And that's the merger that was approved and is going to be closing today between Compass Real Estate and Anywhere Real Estate. Compass is acquiring Anywhere Real Estate. So Compass has been a rapidly growing concern with a controversial president, Robert Refkin. He's been noted for his aggressive recruitment of agents along with a lot of technology. He's a big technology guru. And Compass has had a very impressive growth pattern over the last 10 plus years. Anywhere Real Estate is the owner of a lot of major brands of real estate. So when you eliminate Compass, they control like 7 or 8 of the big brands that you'd be familiar with that are the national franchises. Some of the ones that they are under their umbrella were Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, Century 21, and Better Homes and Gardens, just to name a few. As I've mentioned on one of my previous podcasts, the company that I work with came under the Better Homes and Gardens umbrella earlier in 2025. So this merger will actually impact our office as well. And I've discussed this briefly on one of my other podcasts here. I have some serious concerns and questions about this. So if you put a gun to my head, no pun intended, and ask me to give my opinion of how this is going to impact A, the real estate industry, and B, the consumers, I would say it'll be more negative than positive. Now, why do I say that? because I think generally speaking, when you look at big industries, when one company has too much of a market share or control, they just have too much power in terms of they can theoretically, usually the consumers, when they have less choices, their prices go up, maybe the quality of service can suffer. And I don't mean any disrespect to any of these companies, because my own company is right in this, but when a company gets large, especially in an industry like real estate, you have to worry about the personalization being lost and kind of that corporate speak. Because when you're part of a big conglomerate, there's just more rules and regulations. There's less autonomy for the agents. And overall, it can create more problems than benefits. Now, the benefits, and there's always benefits to everything as well as negatives, the benefits are when you have a large concern, you have ways that you can scale things. So when it comes to your purchasing power of maybe technological products, when it comes to effectively branding your product and things of that nature, if you're a large entity, you have certain advantages over that. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm sure for Compass in the short term it'll be good, because anytime you get these mergers, usually because they've had so much publicity and positive prospectus, I would expect their stock prices to go up. We'll see how they do in the long term, but I think in the short term they'll definitely go up. Now, Robert Refkin, who was the founder and CEO, he will serve as the chairman and CEO of the post-merger company. Now, one of the things that I've talked about a little bit on previous podcasts is where Compass differs from a lot of the other companies. And they've been pushing more of a private marketing network to give their customers the option of not initially placing their homes in the MLS. The MLS is the multiple listing service that all your significant real estate companies subscribe to. So, for example, if I have buyers, I don't just limit what they look at in my listings, but obviously I can show any of these other companies' listings. However, with a private listing network, what that means is that Compass may not be sharing all their listing data with other companies. So what is the benefits and what are the negatives of that to sellers? Well, the benefits in excuse me, the benefits in theory are that it would give the seller more privacy. So for the small percentage of people that maybe are high profile people and don't want people to know that their property is for sale, that would minimize the word of that getting out. It would also limit how many people look at their house. So maybe they're concerned that they have a lot of valuable items in their house, especially on your luxury type of real estate, and they want to limit the traffic to their house. Conversely speaking, it's kind of against most of your sales and business philosophies, as well as real estate, to limit the traffic to the house. I know myself, if I was going on a listing appointment, I wouldn't think that's a good thing to limit the traffic, because the more people that you get into the house, the more competition you get, the quicker the house sells, and it normally sells for a higher price. There's always exceptions, so I can't tell you that my opinions are 100% accurate in either scenario, but I feel comfortable in saying that in the majority of situations, the more exposure you give a house, the better it's going to be for the sellers. And Compass, has been basically explaining this concept, in one of their justifications for it is that A, they want to give the sellers more options, and B, they want to give the agents more options. But in essence, what do I think are the better options? Well, it's a better option for the listing agent because theoretically, if they're not exposing it to other real estate companies, the only people that are initially looking at the house are Compass agents. So it might be good for Compass because maybe they'll have a higher percentage of listings that they sell in-house, even though they might, sell for less than they would have sold for in an open market, or maybe their percentage of listings selling quickly will decrease. But if they sell more of their in-house listings, they'll generate more commission dollars. And for the listing agents, maybe they'll sell more of their own listings, again, hypothetically, so they'll make more money per listing that they sell. So if you're a big listing agent, maybe you think that could be a benefit to you as the listing agent, not to your consumer, but to your listing agent. But keep in mind that the majority of agents in the industry are not listing agents. Due to the way that business takes place in real estate, probably 20% of your agents control 80% of your listings. So the 80% of the agents that don't do a lot of listings, they're going to have a harder time being successful in real estate if that type of philosophy was adopted industry-wide. I don't think it's going to be adopted industry-wide. However, as Compass is going to control all these big entities, it's very possible that they're going to infiltrate that philosophy with the companies that they acquired. They haven't really given any kind of pronouncement about how these other companies will operate long term, but it wouldn't surprise me if over time that slowly changes. We'll just have to wait and see. I do think that limiting competition is never good in an industry. And one of the things that I wanted to piggyback onto what I've given you as this introduction to this merger is kind of the United States political system. And money rules and power rules in this country. And I always I'm very skeptical, and I've been more skeptical of late over how our country's been operating. And that we seem to be taking the guardrails down between the conflict of interest, even more so, of our political entities and money. And so what I'm doing by introducing this concept is this merger was approved. Okay, well, it's not unusual. Obviously, some mergers are approved and some are disapproved. But any merger of this size goes before the Justice Department, and they make a decision based on, whatever decision-making things and political pressures, et cetera, on whether they approve mergers or not. However, in this one, what's become known to the public and what's a big concern to me as somebody that has a lot of questions and disappointments with our political system, is that the Justice Department leadership, meaning the people that run the Justice Department, they overruled their staff concerns that the deal could hurt competition in the real estate market. So keep in mind that when you have these large legal entities like the Justice Department, the staff does the grunt work. They're the ones that do the research. They're the ones that do the analytics. They're the ones that look at other industries' mergers. They're the ones that look at that particular industry, which in this case is real estate, and make a recommendation. And I don't think it's common that they're overruled that quickly, because this merger actually went through quicker than people had projected. So that immediately gives me a red flag. It was overruled, and it went quickly. Now, the quicker part tells me that they didn't want this information to get out into the public as quickly, because they see that if a staff recommends that they don't approve the merger right now, and that it gets approved, it has some red flags. What their staff had recommended was that in-depth investigations should take place, but they were blocked by senior Trump officials. And the reason that even gives more red flags is because regardless of your political affiliation, whether you're a conservative, a progressive, a moderate, a liberal, whatever the case, and it doesn't matter what party you're in, Republican or Democrat, this administration, both when they were in there for their first term in 2016 to 20, and now they've been in their second term for 1 year, they pretty much do not have an arm's length relationship with business entities. Donald Trump, a self-proclaimed billionaire, and he's proud to brag how much his net worth is, accumulated a lot of his money in real estate. And I'm not going to discuss how he did it, but it's a fact that he accumulated his money that way, and that he's a pretty, let's just say, can be a ruthless business person, and he's always in legal fights in the court system. He outlasts he goes to court against a lot of smaller entities, and either outspends them where they can't afford to keep the legal fight, or they just, they're overwhelmed and fatigued and finally give up. And like during this second administration of his, he's potentially doing a lot of controversial things with some of his Middle East business dealings. It's been highly reported that he has close interest, he and his family, with folks in Dubai and the Emirates, and that the United States under the Trump administration is very liberal in going along with a lot of what Dubai wants to do expansion-wise, that a lot of the things regarding money and the Trump administration are things that have never been seen in the United States and should not be tolerated. But it is what it is. That's not going to stop, because our political officials either don't have the integrity and fortitude to oppose these things, or they've just unfortunately passively accepted them. So that's the way things are in this country. But keep a close eye on this merger and the real estate industry. Let's hope that my fears are not, that they won't be realized as much, but I definitely have significant concerns, as did those Justice Department employees. Last but not least, and this is kind of a social political issue, and this will be a very brief thing, but I think it's important for me to go over, is everybody, now that we're out of the holiday season, has probably known people that are getting the flu. The flu is increasing in record numbers. Over the past 6 weeks or so, just from the statistics that have been disclosed, it's just phenomenal. I believe I had read that the number of cases in the United States in December increased 3 or 4 million from the previous month. So that's unbelievable. And, I think transmittable diseases in this country, unfortunately, are going to continue to increase for a couple reasons. Number one, our world is so global now that it's a bigger melting pot than it's ever been. So people travel a lot, and they go from one area to another area. And so they might be bringing back these diseases from their traveling. When you when you're in crowded places, airports and airplanes, and of course the holiday season, you're at family gatherings, you're at Christmas parties, etc. It just dramatically exacerbates this. So why do I mention this? Well, because a couple reasons. The flu always kills a certain amount of people. It's going to be more so this year just because we have more cases. And then we always hear from our government officials how, our government's got such deficits and we need to be more efficient and generate more income, et cetera. Well, the more that people are out for illnesses, especially flu type things where they're really, a lot of them are bedridden and they feel so bad that they just don't get any work done. Think about how much productivity is lost just from an economic standpoint. So I bring that up because our current administration on the health side, that Trump appointed Robert F. Kennedy to be the head of the Health and Human Services, and you've probably heard my comments about him in less than favorable fashion over the past many months. He keeps pushing this anti-vaccine recommendation. He keeps printing false narratives and false information about bad things that happen with vaccines. And so what has happened is the rate of people getting vaccinated on all fronts has decreased. Now, the flu vaccine, I don't know the exact percentages, but the flu vaccine never had the majority of people that got vaccinated. It was always, I think the wording was, older people may need that, but other people don't need that. Well, I've vaccinated myself for the flu for, a fair number of years, and knock on wood, and I hate saying this on the airwaves, I very rarely, if ever, had the flu. And so that's got to be somewhat attributed to me getting vaccinated. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it is I'm active, I exercise, I eat healthy, etc. But I still have that vaccination protection. Now, the flu vaccine is never foolproof, and it's never been stated as that because they have to speculate what types of flu are coming out in that coming year. So it's guesswork, and they don't always guess right. And this year, for example, this latest strain that's caused a lot of cases, there's been a lot more cases because this strain was not one of the ones that they had predicted. Now, what is true is that even if, like in this year, you're vaccinated, but it's not against this strain, you're still less likely to get the flu. And if you do get the flu, it's a lot less likely to be severe, and you're certainly not going to pass away from it or anything. So it still has benefits, even if they guess wrong on it. So getting vaccinated is an individual decision, and I respect that. But if you're making a decision not to get vaccinated, you should base it on sound facts and not by propaganda that is simply false. So that's all for today on me being on my pulpit, so to speak. But I'd like everyone, those that are football fans, enjoy the coming weekend of football games. Enjoy our great weather. Stay safe, be healthy. And this is Marty Kaiser out.